Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video I'm going to give feedback on Madina's speaking test from yesterday. Remember, if you'd like to have your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing, I collect all of my candidates either on my Facebook group or my Telegram channel. Links to both of those are in the description. But let's get into our feedback for today. Good afternoon. My name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Hello, my name is Madina Mahkamova.
And what should I call you?
Please call me Madina.
You might just notice there is a delay and you might think, that shows that there's a problem that the candidate has understanding the question. Nope, it's just an small internet problem with latency. Okay, thank you, Madina. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Do you work or do you study?
I work and I've been working on and off as an English teacher for the course of 5 years now.
All right. Candidates obviously trying to do a lot here. I've been working as an English teacher, present perfect continuous. I know candidates love using present perfect continuous early in their talk, but she uses for the course of 5 years. So that's a bit strange. We can say for 5 years or over the course of 5 years, but for the course of 5 years sounds a bit odd.
And I've worked at schools, mainly the private ones,
And then we get present perfect simple. I've worked at schools, mainly the private ones, adding additional information. All good.
I have worked at several learning centers as an English instructor, and I'm continuing doing that now as well.
So there's a lot going on, there's how long, there's where she's worked using present perfect, there's right now I'm continuing to do that. Remember, the question is just, do you work or do you study? And this is because the examiner wants to know which set of questions they should go to. If you say you work, they will go to those questions. If you say you study, they will go to those questions. So you don't need to offer too much information. If I was doing the IELTS test and the examiner asked me, do you work or do you study? I would say, I work. I work as an English teacher. And I would leave it there. And that would then leave room for the examiner to ask me questions for those details. So, that first question, do you work or do you study? It doesn't need to be extended or developed. And what do you like most about your job?
I guess the triumph in my job, it is the moment when I realize
And I guess the triumph in my job is the moment when I realize
that my students are getting the results they were craving and working so hard for.
yeah, we're working and craving so hard for. It's just the stress shouldn't be on for here. Craving and working so hard for, so hard for, so hard for, not so hard for. And that I mentioned one thing I mentioned to Medina after the speaking test was that she doesn't have this problem that many teachers of English have where they like overstress prepositions. But this is one example where it is noticeable here. I want to say pronunciation is amazing. It's very, very strong, but just, trying to find some minor details there.
And they come to me and say, Miss Madina, I got the result I was hoping for. And their parents start thinking, I guess this is the best moment.
Okay. So, she's speaking about very special moments, and that's okay. When I think like, what do you like most about your job? I actually, it's absolutely fine to say, that joy, that triumph when students get the results they want. That's okay. And do you think you'll continue working in the same place in the future?
Yeah, since the beginning, since I have started working in this sphere, I felt that I belong to this place.
Since I have started working is a bit odd. Usually after since we use past simple. You might be thinking, no, 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 we use present perfect with since. Yeah, but we often use present perfect before since and past simple after since. So, like, I have been here since I was a child. So a little bit odd to use present perfect after since, but I do hear native speakers using that from time to time too.
So I guess for the rest of my life, I will be doing the same thing.
Now let's talk about family. And I will be doing the same thing. Nice, this future continuous, all good. Do you come from a big family?
Yeah, I can say that my family is quite big because there are 6 of us, parents.
Love this expression, there are six of us, very good. Instead of like, we are six, I hear that mistake a lot. There are six of us, great.
And for siblings of mine. That's why I believe we're quite big.
Yeah, siblings, absolutely fine to use siblings. I would use like brother and sister. I'm from a big family. I'm also from a big family with six people. My mother, my father. I have two brothers and a sister. Siblings is okay. It does sound, sometimes it sounds a little bit cold, like siblings. It sounds maybe a little bit formal and in a neutral or a conversational style. Probably brothers and sisters is more common than siblings, but okay. And who do you get on with best in your family?
Absolutely not my siblings.
Love the intonation. Absolutely not my siblings. Really good.
I guess those are my parents since they are like more closer to me and I have a lot more
More closer, again, type of mistake an L1 user could make. We know, with comparative adjectives, more close is acceptable, closer is acceptable, but more closer sounds a bit weird.
to share with them. When it comes to my siblings, I don't know.
Love this one. It comes to for cohesion. Very nice.
We're from different worlds, so
Idiomatic language. We're from different worlds. It works here. It's contextual. All good.
things are not working for us.
And how often do you see your extended family, like your aunts, uncles, and cousins?
I wish we could make family gatherings way more often than we
A lot to like there, but also a bit odd. I guess I wish we could make family gatherings way more often. It sounds a bit odd because I guess is usually used with hedging language, and then way more often is boosting language. So there's a slight disconnect there. And also, it feels to me like the candidate is activating a wish construction, that the candidate, knows this grammar with wish, and she's decided, okay, this is an opportunity for me to activate a wish construction. And you kind of hear this in just the slight break in the rhythm of the speech.
wish we could make family gatherings way more often than we used to do.
And again, I wish we could make family gatherings way more often than we used to do. So I don't know where the past has come from. I wish we could do it more than we do or than we actually do, but I wish we could make family gatherings more than we used to do. That just sounds a little bit odd too. And also, I don't love family gatherings. I don't know.
But it is quite rare nowadays since everybody works twice
Nice flexibility here with the use of since, not to show when, but since to show why. All good.
a month, I guess, is enough for us nowadays.
And it feels natural. I really like the facial expression. It's enough for us nowadays. That like face. Sorry, not the face, but let's just show it one more time.
Nowadays, since everybody works twice a month, I guess, is enough for us
Ah.
nowadays.
Yeah, so I like that, right? And you might say, well, does the examiner judge your facial expressions? No, but very often, if you're memorizing language or if you're speaking not in a natural way, if you're using scripted language, you can kind of see with the facial expression, there's one facial expression and it stays the same throughout, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about something happy or something sad, it always looks like this because the candidate is always focused on something like this, and it affects the pronunciation. And sometimes through a facial expression, you kind of see that, yes, I'm speaking to the human here. This is language that is naturally emerging from the human rather than generic or scripted language which the candidate has prepared. So cool. And do you ever argue with any of your family members?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Love it. Love the breakdown. Absolutely. Very nice.
This happens on a regular since we
On a regular? Did she say on a regular? Let's have a look. Argue with any of your family members?
absolutely. This happens on a regular.
So on a regular basis is okay. On the regular is fine. Is like an idiomatic thing. It happens on the regular or even on the reg, but not on a regular. That's a bit odd.
Since we have got different thoughts on everything. If we prefer to do something, the things are not going to work for me. So
So if we prefer to do something, I would like more concrete examples here. I think that would be a little better.
That's why we have quite a lot of arguments in between, and that's why I guess that's the reason why we meet so little.
Cool, that's the reason why. Nice cleft sentence or relative clause. That's the reason why we da 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 da. All good complex grammar. Now let's talk about names. Do you like your name?
Absolutely. I know that this
So just be careful with the absolutely. We don't want to overuse it. It was wonderful when you used it in the last thing, but we don't want to, using it twice is okay. Using it back to back is a little bit sus, a little bit suspect. Just be careful we're not overusing it.
is quite common, and I guess not quite common, but very common name in Uzbekistan for girls, especially that were born in the beginning of 2000s. But still,
With decades, we usually use the in the beginning of the 2000s. And again, you might think like, Glyn, why are you so focused on these tiny details? Well, I know that this is a candidate who certainly has a ceiling of a band 9. Immediately, whenever I have a candidate, I have a little bit of like a chit chat with them, find out something about who they are, where they're from, and usually you can place them in that category of like B1, B2, C1, C2. Usually that's very, very fast, very easy to do for like most teachers to do. And so immediately I'm thinking, okay, she's at least a band 7, immediately thinking that, and just thinking, how high can she go? And that changes the kind of feedback that I give, right? If I'm giving advice or if I'm giving feedback to someone who's like a 5.5 or a 6, I might not focus so much on every little detail. But when you're looking at a candidate who has aspirations for, that 8, 8.5, 9, you really have to focus on all of those tiny details. So sorry if this seems uber critical.
I do love my name. It sounds great.
Cool. I do love my name. Adding that auxiliary, fine. And does your name have any kind of special meaning?
Yeah, I am from a Muslim country and from Muslim family, and Medina refers to the holy place where the certain type of things are established. So yeah,
Yeah, so I love this certain type, cool. It refers to this holy place where certain type of things are established. I find that quite difficult to understand. The holy place where certain things are established. As a listener, I'm thirsty for more. I think, well, what is usually established there? Do you mean things were established or something? I just don't know from that answer. So, it's a small lapse in coherence. Lapse means like a small breakdown or a dropping off. Generally, the candidate is very good, stays on topic, develops well. But this is one example like, I'm from a Muslim family and my name refers to a special place or a certain place where things were established. I don't know what that means, unfortunately. And have you ever forgotten someone's name?
it happens quite a lot, especially when I'm kicking my new groups. There are 13 to 15 students in a group, and I tend to forget their names
Also, little self-correction, okay?
quite a lot. So that's not something that happens not frequently to me.
Yeah, and I would prefer here that's something that happens not infrequently. And I prefer infrequently to not frequently because anyone can use not, but not everybody knows these negative prefixes. Now, I don't judge this harshly. You wouldn't lose points for that. Generally, people don't lose points, but one thing that we have in English is this weird variety of negative prefixes with adjectives and adverbs, right? You think of like important, unimportant, active, inactive, organized, disorganized, possible, impossible, logical, illogical. So we have many of these negative prefixes. Now, many candidates, many users of English at B1, B2, or maybe even C1, they are a little bit afraid of those negative prefixes, so they just use not. Instead of saying, I'm a very inactive person, they say, I'm a very not active person. Or instead of saying, like, that's not a very practical solution, or sorry, instead of saying that's a very impractical solution, they might say that's a very not practical solution. So when candidate says, like, it happens not or it doesn't happen not frequently or something like this, and instead of using infrequently, I think that's maybe a small missed opportunity to show that knowledge of prefixes. And do you know anyone who has a very unusual name?
Yes, I do. Since I
Nice with the auxiliary. I love those little answers like yes, I can, yes, I do, yes, I have.
started working with older students, I came to realize that names might be really
Came to realize instead of came to realize. Again, just tiny little things. But usually, when a verb in English has this "eyes" suffix, um, we tend not to stress the eyes. So instead of things like realize or organize, we say realize, organize. So that word stress, just slightly off. Is it going to make a difference to your score? Probably not, but just a small thing to keep in mind.
interesting. For example, in Uzbek language, to refer to the meaning of shop, you call it bozor. And I know that there is a guy, my student, whose name is
Cool. A guy whose name is very nice.
Bozor Boy. So it's like when you translate into English, the idea that comes from it is like shop. His name is Shop.
So I really love the candidate's communicative achievement here, that communicative ability, that ability to explain exactly what the strange name is and why it's strange. She paraphrases well. She uses relative clauses like whose name is, but the clarity of the idea, wonderful.
Literally.
Okay, thank you. Now, in this next part of all right, so thoughts on part one. The candidate is obviously a very comfortable and confident speaker of English. Most sentences are grammatically accurate, and she has a wonderfully wide range of grammar, perhaps even too wide. Sometimes you get sentences that refer to like past, present, and future, and maybe some of the sentences feel slightly busy, but she does show a wonderful wide range. There are a couple of tiny grammar mistakes in there, like that use of used to. Wasn't quite sure if she was using used to talk about the present. It seemed like she was. She used decades instead of the decades. Yeah, so a couple of tiny inaccuracies. Vocab is great, really good. I wasn't quite sure about that word triumph at the beginning. It felt slightly forced, and family gatherings is okay, but maybe stylistically I don't love it, but it's okay. Vocab certainly sufficient to deal with these simple topics in part one, no problem. Pronunciation is lovely, really, really nice. The accent has no effect on intelligibility at all. Everything can be perfectly easily understood. There are very minor lapses in rhythm from time to time, like when she was using that I wish I could have more family gatherings, minor lapses in rhythm. But intonation is really, really nice. I think pronunciation is probably her strongest point. And then with fluency and coherence, yeah, that one drop in coherence where she was talking about like it's the place where certain things are established, where I think, well, that's quite vague. And when she was talking about her siblings, they don't they don't agree on a lot of things, or if they want to do some things, backing those up with examples will boost your coherence. So be careful that we're not using vague language. You ask me what happens in your hometown. Oh, well, lots of events happen in my hometown, and there are different events. There are events for young people and events for old people. Sure, but in this answer, I haven't said what those events are, and that's, and I haven't given any examples, and that could be a small problem. But candidate is very, very strong, certainly a C-level candidate, and now we'll look at task 2 and task 3 to see just how strong she is. In part 2, the candidate needs to talk about a time when she had to apologize. This is a past focused task 2, so there are lots of opportunities to use reported speech, sequence of tenses, narrative tenses, future in the past, all of that good stuff. But importantly, candidate needs to talk about a time when she had to apologize. Let's see how she does. Your 1 minute of preparation. You'll have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Yes. I decided to talk about the
One small thing I don't like, and it will not affect your score. I don't like it when I say, "Can you start talking now?" This is a request, and in response to requests, we don't say yes. Just start talking. But it will not affect your score at all. This is just a Glyn thing, not an IELTS thing. It's one thing that I just. Can you start speaking now, please? Yes, I can. You don't need it. Just start speaking.
Yes. I decided to talk about the time when I had to apologize to my mom specifically, and it was probably a year ago when I decided to switch from teaching at learning centers to the Uzbekistan Airways,
Cool. So we've had a bit of background information. Let's find out what you apologized for.
where I'm currently working. The case was when I told my mom that I got the call from Uzbekistan Airways and they were offering
Got the call or got a call? I think got a call is probably better, but got the call could be justified, so no problem.
me the job of an English instructor, but the topic of teaching was quite different since there we tend to teach more like a business English, and the main focus of teaching is speaking. So my mom told me that this is
And there are small things about pronunciation you might not notice here. My mum told me, notice that D has disappeared. My mum told me. This is a feature of connected speech that we call accommodation, when two things link together and one letter disappears. So the disappearance of the D accommodates the linking of told my mother. I told her, or I told her because her told her, but I told my mother, I told my mother, I told my mother. This D disappears, and there's lots of that stuff, and it's really sustained in her speech, this connected speech. It's one of the things that, stops people from getting band 8, band 9 in pronunciation. Is, one of the easiest justifications is, well, there's not enough sustained connected speech, but this candidate really does have it.
governmental organization, and in my current job
Governmental organization, governmental organization. This is something we call catenation, where the last. Let's explain this. If a word begins with a vowel, organization, and the word before ends with a consonant, like a governmental, that last consonant, l, governmental, will link on to the next word, organization. So instead of governmental organization, we get governmental organization. Governmental organization. Of course, it's very fast, you don't hear it, but notice it again. Notice the way she says governmental organization.
focus of teaching is speaking. So my mom told me that this is governmental organization
And you don't know, might not notice it, but it's really, really good flow of the speech there.
and in my current job I do already
Current job, that T disappears, my current job. So you can really, that candidate really sustains that connected speech.
have everything that I need, that I have to thrive in one place. And she said, and she warned me to be quite cautious. And
The only problem I have with this, I'm mentioning lots of positive features of connected speech, and all of that's great, and the vocab's great, and the grammar's super accurate. We haven't got into the apology yet, have we?
be quite, let's say, be a bit like of independent in what I was doing.
Candidate stumbles over her words a little bit, but that's the type of stumbling that I do in my speech. We don't expect candidates to be able to speak like they're reading a speech, and that's a huge myth about IELTS, is that, you can't have breakdowns, you can't have reformulations, you can't do things like this and get a band 9. You absolutely can. This is a very common, disfluencies are a very common feature of what we call spontaneous language production. Trust me, I am a linguist. I know about this stuff. I've studied this stuff, and a little bit of breakdown. It's so common in conversational speech. So if you are the type of person who sometimes stumbles over their words or sometimes pauses to think of an idea, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely natural.
Told her that getting a good job, and especially in such big organizations, is not the chance that everybody gets, and it might be the chance that I'm getting once in a lifetime.
The chance that I'm getting once in a lifetime, okay, but we do have this expression, a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that would be slightly more natural. This is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. That's probably a more natural way of expressing it, but nothing wrong with the way that you expressed yours. Again, my biggest concern is, where is this apology? At what point did you say, Mama, I'm sorry? Like, at what point? Because we haven't got there yet.
And she insisted on kind of not going there.
Okay, so you see, lovely reported verb. She insisted on not going there. Probably we want subjunctive here. She insisted that I shouldn't go there, because we don't have, like sometimes we have, I want to do something, I want you to do something, or I ask to do something, or I ask you to do something. With insist, we don't have that. Like, she insisted me not going there doesn't really work. So the candidate uses she insisted on not going there, but that would mean that the mum said that she wouldn't go there. And so to get around this, when we don't have a complex gerund or infinitive construction, we often use this subjunctive stuff. I'm sorry for my boring linguistic jargon, but she insisted that I not go there, or she insisted that I should not go there. Yeah, not go. Insisted that I not go. Interesting. So yeah, a slight slip with the grammar there, but again, where is our apology?
And staying where I was, since she believed again in the governmental job there are a lot of hypocrites and she has some sort of a bias about people working there. Anyways,
Love this use of anyways.
I started feeling quite furious about what she was.
I started feeling quite furious. I don't feel the fury there. I started feeling, a little bit annoyed, or maybe a little bit angry, but furious is a strong adjective, and the tone of your speech doesn't quite match the strength of that adjective. I was furious, but I was quite furious.
Saying, and I went completely mad and felt that she was even jealous of me that I was getting this kind of a job.
Okay, but what does this have to do with an apology?
I didn't listen for her advice and I didn't want to talk her even.
I didn't want a two? Did we get one or two there?
Didn't listen for her advice and I didn't want to talk her even.
Yeah, so with wanna, you probably, I'm sure you know this. With wanna, we don't use to, right? I want to go there, or I want to go there. But we don't say I wanted to go there. I wanted to do something. Want to do something or want to do something, but not wanna to.
But to my surprise, I was deeply and utterly disappointed with my decisions. First 2 months were
Okay,
perfect.
thank you. So yeah, I think you can kind of see the candidate's like surprise here that the 2 minutes are up. And when I asked her after the test, like, what happened in part two, we didn't get to any apology. She mentioned that the 2 minutes went by just very, very quickly. Yeah, and unfortunately we didn't get to that thing of the apology. I just want to double check that I haven't made any mistake with the timing. So it should be 5:51 we start. Let me just check that. Yeah, so the candidate is speaking at, this is 5:50.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have given the full 2 minutes. Always just want to double check that. So yeah, unfortunately, while there's a lot to like about the rhythm of her speech, the way she develops ideas, the way she explains things, and lots of decent vocab, I will say sometimes, the things like to my surprise, I was utterly disappointed and all of that stuff. It feels a little bit like the candidate is trying to activate special vocabulary. I don't like it when candidates are trying too hard to activate special vocabulary. But yeah, a lot to like in the part two. But the key problem is there was no talk about the apology. And that should be the focus. The time when you had to apologize, she is tangentially on topic. She is partially on topic. You can kind of see that she's working around to this apology that at first she didn't believe and she didn't listen to her mum. And then, to her surprise, she realized she didn't like it. And probably the next part of her speech was going to be the apology, but we just didn't get there. So, a little bit of time management and you're okay. But this will affect, this will mean that you're not going to get the band 9 for fluency and coherence just because we're not on topic enough in this part 2, unfortunately. But let's get to part 3.
Didn't listen for her advice and I didn't want to tell her even. But to my surprise, I was deeply and utterly disappointed with my decisions. First 2 months were
Okay,
perfect.
thank you. All right, so you've been talking about this time when you had to apologize. Let's talk about apologizing in more detail now. What are some common situations when people need to apologize?
Mm, if we look at the word sorry, this is not the thing that is super difficult to say, especially nowadays, and its value is sort of lost. Everybody is saying sorry simply to, if you bump into someone, you just say sorry. If you kind of do something wrong or not so, you again say sorry. This is something already became a habit, yeah.
So the candidate seems to be, discussing the value of the word sorry and whether it's lost its meaning, which is okay. But the question really was, in what situations do people usually apologize? And she didn't mention, that you bump into someone, great vocab, but we want to focus not on like what's my opinion of people saying sorry, but we want to just, talk about a few different situations where people have to say sorry.
But if we really are talking about apologizing deeply for committing something super difficult or super unforgivable, in
I like unforgivable. I'm not sure about difficult.
that case, I guess that would be super personal stuff.
Yeah, and again, super personal stuff is great, but some details, and people obviously don't like giving overly personal details, but we can speak about it in a global way by saying, people usually apologize for super serious stuff, for very personal things. For example, maybe a husband forgets his wife's birthday or something and doesn't buy her a present, and that shows her that she's not loved and not treated, and that can be very difficult. And so, in that case, someone would need to apologize. Again, some examples to back it up would be helpful. And do you think there's a difference then between simply saying sorry and really apologizing?
Absolutely. The word sorry has lost its value a long ago. So I guess when people say sorry, they don't really mean it.
Yeah, a little bit of a they don't really mean it. A little bit of a z replacing the, but okay.
Not
Uh, What
anymore.
what do you think makes an effective apology?
Mm, it's like there is the quote even. Words does not matter, but the
Words do not matter. Not does not matter. Words do not matter.
actions do, yeah?
Cool. Amazing that you found a quote. That's cool.
You shouldn't look at the words of the people who are saying sorry or apologizing. You should look at their actions and if they are kind of behaving at the same level as their fancy sorry does. So I guess that would count as a good one.
Cool. Love this count. That would count as a good one. That's the type of like vocab that I find super impressive. That would count as a good one. Not so much the like utterly disappointed and triumph and things like this. Like that would count as a good one. And even this use of one as substitution, really, really good. And those are the type of things that many people don't notice. That little use of things like one and ones, and that would count. Yeah, all good, all good. But doesn't that take more time? I mean, obviously, apologizing you can do it immediately, but making up for it with actions that takes a long time. No,
It certainly does, but I guess this is
it certainly does. Very
the
nice.
beautiful point of it. You really get to know a person
And I really feel like, I'm engaging with the candidate here. I'm not speaking to someone that's prepared a bunch of grammar and vocab. I'm speaking to a person about apologizing, and the candidate is giving natural, meaningful contributions.
whose intentions are pure and who really feel
Your intentions, lovely collocation.
sorry for what they have committed, yeah?
I feel sorry for what they have committed. Very nice. And do you think it's always better to apologize for important things in person, or do you think it can be done like online by text message?
I personally would like people to
Lovely. Very natural. I personally would like very nice. I don't like it when candidates rush into answers too quickly. I love the fact that you've just taken a moment to. I personally very nice.
apologize if they really feel that they were guilty for committing or
Again, did we get apologize or did we get apologize? Let's just listen.
I personally would like people to apologize if
Apologize. So yeah, we had that now with realize and with apologize. So just be careful when a word has the suffix eyes, we tend not to put the stress on the eyes. Organize, realize, apologize, not organize, realize, apologize.
they really feel that they were guilty for committing or doing something, yeah, but still it depends on a person. We have two arrogant people who are kind of feeling that this is not their level, even if they have done something super bad, they don't feel guilty. They're
Notice that this is not their level. You get that like um voicing of those two arrogant people. Notice it here. This is wonderful for pronunciation.
person. We have two arrogant people who are kind of feeling that this is not their level.
This is not their level. She's voicing the arrogant people, and this is really, really nice with pronunciation.
Even if they have done something super bad, they don't feel guilty. They're
Super bad has that non prevocalic R, that American R. Super bad.
completely guilt free and they wouldn't even
Guilt free, very
care
nice.
about it.
So, yeah, really, really fluent answer there. And do you think apologizing is a skill that people can or even should learn?
That's a beautiful question, actually. I have never thought about it. I guess
I feel like that answer, that response is just a bit rushed. That's a beautiful question. Actually, I haven't thought about it. Naturally, when we haven't thought about something, we usually have some natural pause, like, that's a beautiful question, actually. I haven't thought about it. And just notice the candidate's delivery of this. I feel like it's a rehearsed bit of speech. You tell me. Skill that people can or even should learn.
that's a beautiful question, actually. I have never thought about it.
I don't know. I don't know if it's rehearsed or not. Let's keep going.
I guess it requires to a certain level of skill as well, since not everybody can beautifully explain how sorry they are. Yes,
Love how the candidate's pronunciation here feels sarcastic, how sorry they are, which links back to the earlier point that she made about the word sorry losing its value and actions counting more for words. This is a really skillful bit of rhetoric. Really, really good.
I have met quite a few of people that were
Quite a few people, not quite a few of people. The rules here are really strange, but quite a few of the people, quite a few of my friends, but quite a few people.
apologizing so beautifully that I completely forgave them for doing something super bad, but they were the people who failed.
You mentioned forgiveness. Let's talk about forgiveness in more detail then. How easy or difficult is it for people in general to forgive others? And I know that's not an easy question, right? How easy or difficult is it for people to forgive? And the answer is obviously it depends on what they've done, but we want a bit more. Let's see what answer we get.
Again, it depends on what you have done.
Yeah, I know. But details.
Yes, if the thing that you have done towards somebody is super unforgivable or super deep,
And again, examples would help.
and it kind of carries some emotional level of stress, right?
What acts carry certain levels of emotional stress? We'd want those
I
examples.
don't know, something like this. In that case, of course, this is naturally gonna be difficult for one to forgive for one or another
Love this use of the impersonal one. Very nice.
person. But if it's something on a surface level, I guess that's not gonna matter
Surface level is fine, but then again, examples.
so much.
What are some examples of like crimes against people that are not so that are just super surface level. So a bit more detail, more examples would certainly be helpful. Um, and that will boost your topic level, your topic development to that higher level. Some people say that people today in 2025 are a lot more forgiving than people used to be. Do you think that's true?
No, I would argue with that.
I would argue with that is okay. I would disagree with that is better. I would have to disagree with that is very British. I would have to disagree with that.
A lot of people, since the creation of, let's say, online media, YouTube, and everything, are getting the biased ideas that if, let's say, couples, yeah, if in the pair, the one part does some sort of bad things, they tend to be quite furious about it and
Again, we get this like if they do a bad thing, which is not really specific, examples would be good. They'd be quite furious about it. We get that repetition of quite furious, just a little, and it again doesn't feel, I don't feel the strength of that word furious.
not forget for very, very long time. So I don't really think people have become super forgiving in recent years.
Kind of uses that word super a lot, and that's, that's okay. It's a very common part of modern English. Maybe just be careful. We do have, incredibly, extremely, super, really, very, quite a lot of those quite a lot of those like intensifying adverbs of degree. Super, there's nothing wrong with using super. Just be careful, that we're not overusing it. And finally, do you see, we did have an answer to that, very clear to see the candidate's position, and she points out things in general, but again, a few examples might be useful. Do you think that being too forgiving is a sign of weakness?
Mm, yes and no.
Cool, nice.
I know a lot of people who are super open
Probably notice now the super.
and super naive to forgive everybody for
Probably now notice the super.
doing completely disastrous things to them. So I guess this is gonna be the disadvantage that they're gonna face, and that's gonna come at a very, very high price.
Cool, to come at a very high price, very nice.
So that's why I don't think that people should be super forgiving.
Super again. Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test. All right, so let's get into some marks first of all, and we'll go with and just a few comments. So, candidate clearly is very strong. I don't think anyone is surprised to know that she's going to be at sea level. Question is just how strong is she, and are there any places here that we can award that band 9? And I think the biggest contender for a band 9 probably is pronunciation. And I just want to show why this is difficult for me to mark. And I don't know if I'm going with the 8 or the 9 with the pronunciation. I still haven't decided fully. So let's take a look at this, right? Uses a full range of phonological features. Yes. Now, there was that like misuse of the versus the a little bit, but for me, I do think that the candidate demonstrates a full range of phonological features to convey precise and or subtle meaning. Yeah, I think we are perfectly fine with that. Flexible uses of features of connected speech is sustained throughout. Yes, I do think. Is it sustained throughout? Let's come back to that. Can be effortlessly understood throughout? Absolutely. Accent has no effect on intelligibility? Absolutely. So I think there could be a justification for all 4 of those points for pronunciation. Let's have a look at band 8 and see if it just feels better. Uses a wide range of phonological features. I think she's better than that. I think she uses a full range, just about. This is the kicker. This is the key question here. Can sustain appropriate rhythm. She can sustain appropriate rhythm. Flexible use of stress and intonation across long utterances. Yes. Despite occasional lapses. Now, if I just asked another, teacher, or another linguist, or another examiner, did this candidate have occasional lapses in rhythm? And I think the examiner would be justified in saying occasional lapses in rhythm. Yeah, there were some occasional lapses in rhythm. Okay, can be understood throughout. Yes, accent has minimal effect on intelligibility. So for me, I feel like there is justification in awarding the 9. Probably, I would say 70% of examiners for this would probably award the 8 for pronunciation. Probably. For me, if I feel I can justify the higher mark, I usually give the higher mark. That's just the way I am as an examiner. If I can justify the higher mark, I give the higher mark. I'm sure that there are some examiners out there who, if they were watching, they would say, no, come on, bro, this is an 8. I think there is enough in there for a 9, and so for that reason, I am going to award the 9. Mhm. So, let's write why I'm awarding the 9. So, you have a full phonological range. It is incredibly easy to understand everything that you say without any effort. You make wonderful use of connected speech and intonation. In very few cases, there is some lapse in rhythm. In very few cases, there are some. Certainly, there are some lapses in rhythm that are not, the regular lapses in rhythm that an L1 user of English would have. So for me, I think there is enough for the 9, so I'm going to award the 9 for this. Anyway, the others, I think, are solid 8s, and I don't need to look back at the criteria for that. So, fluency and coherence, I'm going to award 8 for this, and the reason why is thus. You develop your answers really well and have a very, and have a very high level of flexibility with cohesive devices, all of those linking words, substitution words, reference words, relative clauses, relative pronouns, all of that stuff, all good stuff. However, you didn't fully address part 2, and you sometimes fail to give meaningful examples. Just some of your language is a little bit vague without those examples. I don't need to give you examples of this, I think, because throughout the test, throughout this feedback, I think you've probably taken notes on some of those cases where you should have used more examples. Yeah. Lexical resource, also I'm going with 8. Sorry about that. I'm going with 8 for lexical resource 2. You have enough vocab to deal with both personal and impersonal topics. You make wonderful use of common and less common vocab. There are occasional unnatural choices with vocab. And again, throughout the test, I think I mentioned some of those slightly unnatural choices, and that's enough to bring it down to a band 8, but still, very, very strong. And I think with grammar also, it's the same. Your accuracy is wonderful, really, really nice with accuracy. I'm going to go with band 8 here. So you show off a really nice wide range of vocabulary. Of grammatical constructions and sentence types. You range really, really nice. However, there are some mistakes that are not really characteristic of an L1 user. Yeah, and so it's always difficult. A lot of people want to get that 9. Sorry, I don't think you can see what I wrote for fluency and coherence. My head was in the way. Sorry about that. So if you need to see it, there it is. Um, so, so. Many people want to get that band 9. I fully understand. Personally, I don't think it's worth the effort to get a band 9. I don't think anybody needs a band 9. Certainly, if I was hiring a teacher, I would not want them, I would not demand that they should get a band 9. Band 8 for me, absolutely fine to be a teacher of English, and depends on who you're teaching. In some cases, even a band 7 is fine to be a teacher if you're teaching lower levels. But for me, overall, this gives a score of 8.25, which rounds down to 8.0. And areas of improvement. So, firstly, I'm going to give just the first thing is you have to find a way to manage time better in part 2. So it feels like you're giving a lot of background information, but we really have to keep in mind always, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to speak about an apology. I'm not supposed to spend the whole 2 minutes talking about the reasons why I had to give the apology. I have to find a way to get to that, the main part of the thing. So of course, a bit of background, a bit of summarizing or concluding remarks at the end or comments at the end is fine, but most of it should be focused on that, thing. The apology is what we want to talk about. Cool. Be a little bit careful with eyes verbs, because you do have mispronunciations of those slightly, and some examiners might think, well, a couple of mistakes with those eyes verbs, I don't like it. Can't aboard the 9. And also be a little careful with your overuse of super. Again, we have lots of intensifiers in English. We don't have to use super every time. We can use really, very, incredibly, extremely, lots of things there. And maybe one more super important thing is you should give 2 more examples. Let's say concrete examples. So instead of saying, things that could cause emotional damage, we want to give examples of those things that could cause emotional damage. I know sometimes if there are personal topics, we don't want to go into too much detail. It makes us feel uncomfortable, sure. But, if you're talking about your siblings and the things that you argue about, oh, yeah, we argue about a lot of different things. And so if somebody wants to do something, it's always difficult to make a decision. It's like, yeah, but I need to know. I don't need to know, but a fuller answer, full topic development means giving those examples. So just a few cases where you're a little bit short. I want to say the candidate was, lovely to speak to, really easy to speak to, a very friendly person. I like the very human approach that she had to the test. I think that was great. So often I see, even at high level, candidates feel super stressed and they have like one face and they don't have a lot of emotive range in their pronunciation because they are so prepared for the test and they are treating this as like a test and I'm going to activate every bit of grammar and vocab I know. I like that the candidate took a more natural approach. There were times where maybe she was trying a little bit too hard, but in general, I think that she took a really natural, human approach to the test. And in general, I think that always works better. What do I expect in the real test? I think she probably, if I had to guess, I would say there's a 60, let's say a 50% chance that she'll get 8.0, a 40% chance that she'll get an 8.5, and a 10% chance she'll get a 7.5. I don't think she'll get the 9. I think if she has a terrible day, she'll get the 7.5. If she has a good day, I really think 8.5 is a very realistic target for this candidate. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this feedback, this breakdown of the candidate speaking. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. But, let's not pretend that many people are still here at the 54-minute mark. Anyway, if you are still watching and you'd like your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, I collect all of my candidates on my Telegram channel or on my Facebook group. Links to both of those are given in the description. Candidates are always selected at random, but if you don't want to go through the random process, if you'd prefer to pay for a speaking test or a writing check, then a full price list is available on my website, expertexaminer.com. Again, links in the description. More videos from me coming soon, but for now, bye bye.